You're listening to Transcaster Radio, a podcast about trans life and all that goes along with it. You can listen to the show anywhere you enjoy podcasts, and we'd love for you to subscribe, rate, and give a review. It helps us reach more people, and we greatly appreciate it. Now, here's your host, Kayden Taylor.
Hey, Transcasters. Welcome to this week's episode of Transcaster Radio. I'm your host, Kayden Taylor. I have an awesome guest for you this week, Heather Vickery. She's the host of the Brave Files podcast and the owner of Vickery & Company. I'm going to let her introduce herself. Hey, Heather.
Hey, how are you, Kayden?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. We were just joking. We're recording at night, which I don't usually do. So we both rushed through dinner, but I'm excited. I'm looking forward to having a chat with you.
I am too. I hope dinner was good.
It was good. We just did this whole spiel. We just did leftovers because I'm not about making dinner right before I do an interview. So yeah, does everybody fend for themselves? But we sat down for 10 whole minutes together and we talked about our day. So I guess I'll call it a win.
Okay. That's a plus. That's a plus. We stood up to eat dinner together. So At least you sat down.
Healthy habits.
Yeah. So I want to start out talking a little bit about your company and how it came to fruition.
Yeah. So I'm a success coach. What that means is a life and business coach. It's a fancy way of saying life and business coaching. And the reason I chose success coach is because I absolutely know beyond a shadow of a doubt that if your life isn't functioning on all cylinders, your business won't either. So I always tell people that I will do life coaching without business coaching, but I won't do business coaching without life coaching because you need the help. You can't do it all. And if you need support in your business, there's personal stuff that goes with it. And a lot of the systems and strategies that we work on can parallel. They can work for your personal life as well as your professional life. So I've been a business owner, an entrepreneur for 24 years now.
Oh, wow.
Which feels crazy to say.
Yeah.
And then about 5 years ago, I transitioned into coaching and speaking after I went through a major life transformation, which included coming out and getting a divorce and all kinds of crazy things.
I feel like we all need a success coach
in
some way, shape, or form in everyday living. I definitely know I could use it.
Yeah, I have one still, right? Like I don't believe in selling something you're not willing to buy. Absolutely. I don't talk to my coach as often as I used to when I first started, but he's always there. And whenever I need something or I need to run something by him or do a pick me up or some stuff is going down, he's my go-to guy. Absolutely.
What is success to you? Like, how do you define success?
It's a really great question that doesn't have an answer because, well, I can give you my answer, but in general, success, and this is what I help people discover, your success is defined by you and for you. And looking at other people who have quote unquote been successful and going, oh, I want that. That's not going to work because they're not you. So for me personally, success is having, healthy, well-adjusted children that still tell me their secrets and clients who I know I'm serving powerfully because they share with me and their businesses are growing and their lives are transitioning and transforming. It's being asked to speak on large stages and earning the respect and admiration and trust of all of these people that I work with and corporations that bring me in. So I never define success by money. For me, money is a byproduct of service. And if I'm giving my heart and I'm working from authenticity, then the rest of it falls into place.
I agree with you. I think that success is measured by the person because obviously my success is going to be different than my fiance's success.
Exactly.
And she's going to be a pharmacist in 2 years. So she's certainly going to make more money than I am. So I definitely can't define whether or not I'm successful based off of how much money I make. And right. I truly believe that. But I think that a lot of people define success today by how much money they're bringing in. And if it's not a sufficient amount, they don't feel like they're successful. So what would you say to somebody who, follows the success based off how much they make?
I would like to get into conversation with them. They think that for a reason. They've been trained to think it. Somebody told them they should, or they don't know any better, right? So my job is to help ask real questions. And those are typically hard questions, and peel back all the layers and figure out what you actually want, right? Like if success to you is $500,000, why? What is it that you can have if you earn $500,000 that will make you feel successful? And maybe it is. If success to you is $50,000, why? What is it that you want from it? Is it, I just want to pay my bills without stress. I just want to know that there's food on the table every day. Okay, then let's use that as a benchmark for success instead of, and so I coach them through it. I teach them to not judge it by money, but let's judge it by the way we feel. And do we have a better budget? Are we paying bills on time? If it's that $500,000 mark and it's because you want to speak on 5 major stages a year and take 4 big vacations. You have one client who her goal literally when she came to me was to work 3 days a week and take 6 weeks off 3 times a year straight.
Wow.
And now she does.
Wow. Interesting. That's not something I would have even thought of.
Yeah. And now
That's
she feels
awesome.
successful. She does the same amount of work she did before, but she does it differently. She works smarter and she communicates better. She has way stronger boundaries and explains those boundaries, manages her balance better, and plans for it. Right. So we figure out what you actually want, not just what you think you want. And then we build it.
That's awesome. Does your identity affect how you coach at all?
The way that my identity, it certainly doesn't affect my ability to coach either way. But what it gives me is an extra layer of vulnerability and honesty with folks. They know that I have real life experience. While I am super white and I have white privilege out the wazoo, and I am very straight passing. I actually have a funny story about that, which I'll tell you from Podcast Movement last week. So there's a lot of privilege that comes with that. But once you get to know me, you know that I have been through it. When I talk about understanding hard times, I really do mean it. Now, that doesn't mean that I can understand everybody's situation. I don't know what it's like to be a Black woman in America or anywhere, right? I am first to admit that. But it allows people to connect with me in a really honest way, because anytime we have vulnerabilities that we can collaborate on, we feel less alone.
I agree with you.
But so the story, so I had this great time at Podcast Movement, which was just last week. And do you know the ladies, we're going to pimp their pod. Do you know the ladies from Latter-day Lesbian?
Oh, yes. Yes, I do.
They're my buddies. So I'm going to make
They're
them
awesome.
listen to this. Mary, Shelley, hello, darlings. We literally were stuck like little glue balls together the entire time, which was so much fun. And I've interviewed Shelley. She's been on my show and it's a great interview. It's really, really a great interview. And we talk about coming out and having all these kids and, all this stuff. And at one point that first evening, Shelley was taking a nap and Mary and I were at the bar and I said something about being a lesbian and Mary goes, "But you're not a lesbian." And I said, "No, I am." She goes, "No, you're not." I said, yes, I am, really. And it was hilarious. It went back and forth. So that was the joke all week. I said, well, clearly Mary never listened to my interview with Shelley because she didn't know. And because I look straight, I wear dresses and I have longer hair and I love makeup and high heels. And that was not her definition of what a lesbian looked like. And it's not a lot of people's definition.
It's true, because even before I transitioned, I was considered a butch lesbian. And so I didn't have the, cis heteronormative passing privileges even when I identified as female. So yeah, I understand exactly where you're coming from. That's funny though, coming from,
I know,
from another lesbian, but
it was so funny. And then later in the week, we met a woman who's absolutely presented as a lesbian and wasn't. And I said, we should take a picture. We didn't do it, but I wish we had, and put it on Instagram that says, check your assumptions. And then lesbian pointing at me and not a lesbian pointing at her. You guys, you got to let it go. And that to me is such an important thing. this is not my business, but it is my passion, advocacy work in general, especially with so many trans folks and non-binary folks out there. We've got to check our assumptions at the door. Call yourself on your bullshit. And it is not just the straight people. It is not just the cis people. We all have to do it. We all have to work extra hard to stop with the assumptions.
I remember when I met my first non-binary person, who is now a very good friend of mine. They present masculine, but they don't identify as male. They identify and use they, them pronouns. So I went into the assumption that they were a trans man. And I had to check myself at the door, because I had to realize that, that was just as bad as people assuming things for me. And I have a cousin who later after that came out as non-binary as well. So it was a transition process for me. And I also had to realize my own assumptions that I make on everyday people I see walking down the street.
Absolutely. I have the funniest story about that. So my kids go to a progressive education school, social justice based, social and emotional based learning. And we know a lot of folks who are non-binary. We know some trans folks. We know lots of different unique families. Like when people ask me all the time, oh, how did your kids react to you being gay? Well, they didn't care about that. They were bummed about the divorce, but they didn't care about my sexuality. But a couple weeks ago, I had my girls in the car and we were going to Panera for dinner. And we're in the car and I'm waiting for somebody to pull out of a parking spot so I can park. And I see two female presenting women get into their car. And then they all just sit there. Why people do that, I do not know. They're just sitting in the car. And finally I'm frustrated. And I said, come on, ladies, somebody needs to move. And my 9-year-old said, Mama, how do you know they're ladies? And I said, oh, well, they looked like ladies. And she goes, so? And I said, yes, you're right. That does not mean they identify as ladies. And I shouldn't have said that. And thank you for calling me a bullshit.
And isn't it interesting how the younger generations, that's just natural to them? Like,
I love it.
They just don't assume what your gender is or what your sexual orientation is.
I love it.
It
just gives me so much hope.
Yeah, me too.
But I carry all of that with me when I coach and when I speak. That story about Tessa, I tell that all the time, because in business, we make assumptions. We make assumptions about ourselves. We make assumptions about other people. Oh, they don't really want to buy what I have to sell. Or if I call, they'll never answer the phone. Or nobody wants to watch my video, right? We don't know these things. We assume them for whatever reason, and we dig in and figure that out. But I parallel that, and I use it as an opportunity to do my social justice and my social activism work, as well as reminding people how much crossover there really is in everything, how much intersectionality there is. Yeah.
Which I think sometimes people don't see that.
They don't. I get very wide-eyed folks in the audience, and I'm like, I never, ever thought of that.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my goal. To me, maybe that's the definition of success for me, is to open people's eyes to something that can help them grow that they never knew existed.
I like that. So I don't know how much knowledge you have about in-depth of the trans community, but a lot of trans people get stuck in life, and, especially the, older population, they sometimes have lived a life that isn't them for so long. And we get stuck sometimes, or in our transition as well, because we might not be able to afford that surgery or something like that. What kind of advice as a success coach? Because we look at our lives as success and our transitions as success. So what kind of advice would you have for a trans person? I mean, it goes for not just trans people, but LGBT people in general, as far as getting through those humps and hurdles.
Well, all the same systems apply no matter who you are, but getting over that fear of rejection, if you step out vulnerably and authentically as yourself, takes practice and work. So what I first and foremost offer trans folks and LGBTQ folks in general is safety. There are no safe spaces. There are only safe people. And you can come in to a conversation with me and know that I will honor you and I will not judge you. And I may not know all the answers and I may ask questions, but we're here to help you thrive. And so there's that level of safety. So once they can check their concern of that at the door, then we can really start to dig in and figure out how they want to live their lives as whomever it is that they want to live their lives as, right? And what do you want to present to the public? What do you want from the people around you? What do you have to give? This is not just about what I can get. It's always about what you can give. How can you grow and help other people grow with it? As a podcaster, I tell a lot of stories. The Brave Files is an interview series where we talk to people who have stepped out of fear and into bravery in a million different ways. Now, I can't tell the story of somebody who's transitioned every week, but I do tell, or somebody who's come out, or somebody who's quit their job and started a business. Like, yes, all of those things are brave, but my commitment to my listeners is that we tell a unique story in some way or another every single week. But we have told trans story. I know that you know my buddy Mason.
Yes.
We told Mason Aids' story, which I really got ballsy with that title from a podcasting standpoint. And it's called Queer Recovering Homophobe. But I
liked it.
Thank you.
I mean, it says exactly what the interview is about.
Yeah. Yes. And I said that to them. I'm like, okay, Mason, let's go big. And they're like, yeah, let's do it. So we told that story was about overcoming mental health and self-hatred and voting against your own rights and all of that, right? Queer Recovering Homophobe. I've told, F to M trans story. I've told M to F trans story, but very different. Some older, some younger, some with children, some without. We have an episode coming out. I'm not sure when this one will air, but an episode coming out in November with America's first transgender infantryman. I never say that right.
Infantryman.
Infantryman.
Yeah.
Trish King, who's an incredible human and a really good friend of mine. I met through authorship, through writing. So I try to tell stories that are unique, but that will connect, and people can say, oh, that's me. I feel that. I can relax there. Like, there's somebody else like me. I'm not alone. So I offer that as well.
That's awesome. I came across your podcast just searching. It was, I think, it just populated on my Apple feed and I was like, oh, this sounds interesting. So I gave it a listen, and you had already been on for almost a year by the time I had listened to it. And so I obviously had a lot to catch up with, but which is fine because I'm a podcast junkie and I will binge if I like something. And I binged it, and I wait for your podcast episode to come out every week because even if it's not that trans person, I feel like, there are other people that are going through hard things that, that got through it and are successful and succeed in life. And it's just heartwarming, and some of them hit close to home, and it's just, if my listeners are listening, it's just a podcast that you've got to go listen to.
Thank you. That's exactly what I wanted. That's what I want. I want people to, the idea is that when we choose bravely in big ways and in small ways, our lives are enriched and the lives of the people around us are enriched. And so my goal each week is to show you one new little thing you can do to choose bravely. And when you feel how good that is, you'll do more of it.
Very true. Yes. So why did you start it? Like, was there a reason behind it?
Well, I love podcasting like you. I'm a podcast junkie, and I've wanted to do it for a very long time. And I didn't know what I wanted to do. Like, do I do a business podcast? Do I do just a chatter one? I thought about one called Can We Talk? In fact, I'm pretty sure I bought the domain name for that, where like I would pick a different topic, 4 different topics each week. And we would do, arts and entertainment, politics, parenting, whatever. I had all these ideas, but I couldn't pull anything together. Nothing felt right. And then in early March of 2018, I was making dinner in the kitchen for my kids. and the name came to me, the Brave Files. The Brave Files. I could tell the story or interview people that tell stories of living courageously. And that made sense to me. So it's not a business podcast, but it is directly aligned with the work that I do and my heart and my soul. And I went right to GoDaddy. Not that we're promoting any particular whatever.
It's okay.
And I bought the domain and I went to Google Forms and I created an application form and I put it on Facebook and I said, I'm starting a podcast. This is what it's about. If you have a story to tell or you know somebody who does, fill this out. And then I made a couple of calls to like my first guest who is still, I love it. My sound sucked. You guys, if you listen to the first, several episodes, the sound was not good.
That's okay. Mine too.
Interviews are good. So they're worth listening to. And I never want to get rid of them. But I interviewed a friend who was a former client, who's the CEO of Equality Illinois. And his whole life is dedicated to social justice. And I said, Brian,
yes, that was a great episode.
Oh, thank you. I loved it so much. And so I asked about 4 people to be on the show. And I got applications and that's it. It's just rolled. Now, what I did to push myself is I picked a launch date. I was like, okay, we're going to air on April 12th. And I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to do that. I don't know the first thing about producing a podcast. So I set about, I got a podcast coach, somebody who knew what they were doing. Tracy, she's awesome. If you need a podcast coach, I'd be happy to recommend her. Although I could do it now too, I think. But she was awesome. We tried to hook up at Podcast Movement and couldn't make it happen. And got on some of these podcast groups, which you and I are on now together. And I just did it. I just started doing it and it's grown and it's gotten better. And now, I have an interview list scheduled for interviews to air all the way through next August.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's a year away.
That's a year away. So I batch my interviews. I'll do like 4 to 7 in a week, and then I won't interview for a month. And I do that because otherwise it would own my life. As it is, I spend a great deal of the week promoting and getting stuff ready for the show. And I have an audio engineer and an executive assistant and an associate producer. Like I have all this stuff, but I still spend so much time on it. So, people will, if you went to schedule an interview with me now, I probably couldn't even get you in until the beginning of the year for an interview.
That's something I need to learn to do because I feel like I'm always interviewing like 2 people a week and the podcast takes a lot of time as it is, let alone sticking interviews in there. So
yep, it sure does. I mean, the first best tip I can give you is just decide right now. Go and get an Acuity or a Calendly account. I use Acuity. I love it. And put it together, a link, decide. I would say pick 2 times a month where you're willing to do interviews or 3 if you, depending on, your schedule, and open that up and send people there to schedule and let the online scheduler handle it.
I'll have to try that.
It's a game changer.
So courage and bravery is something that trans people deal with a lot. When you figured out the name of the podcast, is that kind of why you decided on courage and bravery?
Well, courage and bravery is something that is a space I've been working in for a long time. I've been living in it. In fact, I do a word of the year every year. I don't know if you do that or not, but
I don't.
Tell me about it. Yeah, I encourage it. And I've done some blogging about it. If you go to my website, which is vickeryandco.com, and search word of the year, you'll see it. But 5 years ago, my word for the year was brave. Because I had pushed through on my divorce. I was moving in with my new partner. I was trying all these new things. And I just decided that I was going to challenge myself to do the scary thing as much as possible. And I was going to be brave. And I embodied it. And so, yeah, the word of the year for me, the way I use it is I focus on manifesting that in every way possible. So my words, I've been brave. I think I did connect one year. I did intention one year. I remember the other one. This year's word is explore. And for me, that has been exciting. I want to explore travel. I want to explore learning new things. I want to explore new ways to listen and new ways to connect. I explored actually making time to read again for the first time in 20 years. It's been life-changing, truly. Exploring classes and growing and just whatever I can imagine. I'm exploring all sorts of new things. And so Brave has been a thing, a space, a motivator for me for a long time. And I have a speaking topic on it. So what do it scared? I have a patented method that I teach and go in and speak on called the Brave method. So it was just a really natural extension. And while we sometimes drop awesome little business goodies in the podcast episode, it's just not a business podcast.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean you can't learn business things from it though.
That's true.
I mean, I never listen to business podcasts. That's my full confession. Never,
really?
Ever. I
have one that's called The Out Entrepreneur.
Oh, well, that's Rhodes. That's different.
I listen to that one.
I love Rhodes. I've had Rhodes on the show and I've been on Rhodes' show twice. And we hung out a little bit at Podcast Movement. That's a good one because it's not just telling you how to run your business. It's also connecting with all of the different intersectionality pieces of who you are. So I feel like, yes, that's a business show, but there's also this really vulnerable human component with it that's powerful. But I get most of my inspiration from non-business learning, from books or TV or podcasts. I find my inspiration in really incredible places.
I do too. I'm other than TV, I'm not a TV buff unless it's baseball or sports.
Yeah.
But I don't read. I listen to audiobooks.
Sure.
I have a hard time reading a book, but I can listen to an audiobook all day. Yeah. And I drive a lot because I live far from where I work. So between podcasts and audiobooks, that's how I get my inspiration from things. So
love it.
And of course, anytime I can read or listen to other people's stories. And that's why I love the Brave Files so much, because just listening to it is just awesome. What do you love most about the podcast?
There are two things that I love most about the podcast. One is truly the extraordinary people that I have met, and without any ounce of exaggeration, they have changed my life. They've taught me so much. I've connected so much. I've grown so much. And then the second thing is having that effect on the listeners, knowing that I have produced this format where people can then themselves grow and change. We did an episode at Thanksgiving and we're going to do it again. We called our gratitude episode. So we talk about gratitude and celebration every week. Mm-hmm. And I had listeners and past guests send in little clips of things they're grateful for from the year.
Oh, that's awesome.
If you haven't listened to that,
I don't think I've listened to that one.
It's a great one. It's like 35 minutes of hearing people share their gratitude. And that may sound dull, but it's quite wonderful. And one of the guests said, she listed all these things she loves about the show. She said, but what I love most is what I learn about myself each week.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, that's why I love this show.
Yeah, that's powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, do you have any words of encouragement for somebody out there, listeners, that may be struggling with something right now?
Yeah. It sounds trite, but it's not trite. And I'll say it as many times as I have to, is you are not alone. You are not struggling on a journey that nobody else has been down. So ask for support. People want to give it to you. They really do. And you are valuable and you are worth getting that support. So don't give up on yourself.
Yeah, I think sometimes support is there, but we don't always know where to look for it.
So I think it's a really, really valid thing to say, but trust your resources, trust the people around you. So if you don't have access to, if you don't, you're not listening to this podcast, but if you don't have access to a computer or a phone or anything like that, find a neighbor that you feel safe with and say, I need this type of support. Do you know where I can go? Because people will be helpful. People will figure out that I don't know, but let me ask somebody else. I just recently had somebody send me a text message that a friend of a friend's son who is trans was living with his boyfriend, and the boyfriend kicked him out, and he lives in Chicago now, and he doesn't have a job, and he didn't have anywhere to stay, and what could we possibly do? And I immediately reached out to the folks that I know in his neighborhood and in that community, and within an hour we had a place for him to stay.
That's awesome.
So even if you think you don't know where to start next door. Start with somebody. I mean, it's important to make sure you're safe, but and you didn't identify what type of struggle. So if it's a business struggle, but all the same shit applies, quite frankly, right? It's not as drastic as if we're talking about your life. If you are, God forbid, suicidal, or you just feel, super depressed, that's one thing. But in business too, you're struggling. You're not in this alone. You don't have to do this alone. There are ways to get help, and those ways don't always have to cost money.
True. So where can we find you?
I'm so easy to find. My kids think it's the greatest thing ever, because if you Google my name, all my info pops up and my picture, and they think it's, my daughter says when she's going into 8th grade, sometimes when I'm at school and I just miss you, I'll Google your name so your pictures pop up. But, I know, that's so sweet. She's so sweet. So my website is Vickery and Co, VICKERYANDCO.com. My email is heather@vickeryandco.com, which you can get to from the website, or just send me an email. I'm Vickery and Co on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. And really, truly, if you just type in Heather Vickery on Google, you can find me.
You'll populate. And don't worry, I'll have it all in the show notes on the website too. So
awesome. So
all right. Well, thank you. I appreciate you taking the time
my pleasure.
Tonight. Since neither one of us normally record at night, I do appreciate it. So
it was great to talk to you. I've been looking forward to it. Thank you so much for having me on.
All right, Transcasters, that's all we have for you this week. Thank you for listening, as always, to this week's episode of Transcaster Radio. Don't forget to tune in next week for another great episode. Until next time, love life, live authentically, and as always, rise up.